Welcome you to the cow for today. May I request you to kindly assume your seats and we start our day's program. A very good morning once again. We shall get started with our today's session. Let me start by inviting the Secretariat to make administrative clarifications, and then we shall begin on our agenda. Secretariat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an update on 3 documents. Document 13.2 relating to the budget. Our translation team is busy right now making sure that the relevant paragraphs are consistent across all 3 languages and should be posted certainly within the next hour. Second, we have CRP 1, the Gandhi Nagar Declaration. It is now posted in all 3 languages. We hope to take that up first thing in the afternoon. Third, CRP 26.4.4 on connectivity was briefly posted on the in-session documents, but it has been taken down. So just letting you know, if you already downloaded that, you should dispose of that document. A new revised version will be posted shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. We shall now begin with our agenda item. I want to suggest that we begin by getting an update from the Credentials Committee. The Chair of Credentials Committee, kindly update the meeting. Saudi Arabia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. The Credentials Committee held its 3rd meeting on Wednesday, 19 February. The meeting was attended by representatives of Malawi, the Netherlands, Saudi Arabia, and Uruguay. The credentials of the following 6 parties were examined and found to be in order: Kyrgyzstan, New Zealand, North Macedonia, the Netherlands, Palau, and United Arab Emirates. I would like to invite all delegations that have not yet deposited their credentials at the registration desk with the Secretariat to please do so immediately and no later than the close of the Committee of the Whole this morning to enable the Credentials Committee to complete its work as soon as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Saudi Arabia. Let me now invite chairs of the working group to update the meeting on the progress in the respective working groups. I will start with the budget working group. Nora, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. Yes, we continue our work. We had a continuation yesterday, and I would say we are on track, and we should be able to conclude as agreed today. And it will be our final meeting is set to be at lunch today from 1 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Nore. Let's hear from Terrestrial Working Group. Chair of the Terrestrial Working Group, Mongolia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, keep you waiting. Terrestrial Working Group had a meeting yesterday, and so far we have only one pending issue on African elephant, and we just had a small group meeting, and countries of the range states agreed on the text, which we are going to circulate it with the working group members and other colleagues as well. So we will be ready by tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, Terrestrial Working Group. Let's hear from Avian Species Working Group.
The Avian Working Group met last night for the 3rd time. We finalised discussions on document 26.1.2 land birds, and a conference room paper is being produced. We also had a discussion on the listing proposal for the Little Bustard, clarifying some open questions in relation to the proposal. We still have 3 outstanding issues to discuss in the following documents: illegal killing, flyways, poisoning. Parties will be meeting in small contact groups during the morning and lunch to discuss alternative wording to open points, and depending on how the contact groups progress, we might have a shorter meeting of the Avian working group already during lunch. If yes, this will be announced here in the cow before lunch. And we'll be meeting again in the evening, possibly all night, to conclude the remaining open issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Avian Species Working Group. Let's hear from Aquatic Species Working Group.
Thank you, Chair. Aquatic Working Group met last night, and we've concluded all of our business. Documents relating to the resolutions and decisions and the concerted actions have all been endorsed. It's not quite the same situation for the listing proposals. The proposal to list the white-tipped shark on Appendix 1 is supported by the working group. There were 2 proposals for listing of the smooth hammerhead shark on Appendix 2. The proposal by Brazil, it's document 27.1.9a, for a regional listing is supported by the working group. But the proposal by the EU, it's 27.1.9b, for a global listing, we did not achieve consensus on that, and that will need to be discussed in more detail here in the cow. That's the same situation for 27.1.10, the proposal to list the taupe shark on Appendix 2. We did not reach consensus on that as well, and you'll need to discuss that in here in more detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Avian Species Working Group, and thank you all the working groups for a job well done. I will now invite New Zealand. We set up a contact group, actually a working group, on interpretation of Article 3 of the Convention. Let me invite New Zealand to report back to the meeting regarding the outcome of the discussions. New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. The contact group yesterday met and had a constructive meeting. We're nearly sorted with a draft. We're hoping to finalise it shortly, and I don't expect that we'll need a further meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, New Zealand. Seems good, and we seem to be moving forward. There is an issue of appointment of COP-appointed councillors. We've received nominations now, following the extension of the period for submission of nominations. We now have nominations on each subject area. Some of the subject areas we have more than one nomination. So we need to set up a contact group, or call it Friends of the Chair, to look through the nominations and advise us on who the COP should appoint as councillors for respective subject areas. If we could achieve consensus in the contact group, that would be our preferred option, so that the COP looks at one single candidate for each subject area. But in case we do not achieve that, we shall see how to go about it. So I wanted to ask Australia, that has been chairing the working group on this issue, to chair are friends of the chair session, but make it open, given that their interests. You make it open. You sit, look through the received CVs on each subject area, and come back to us with the agreed recommendation, preferably one candidate for each subject area. But in case you fail to achieve that, you will still come back to us and we find a solution. So the Secretariat will announce the room where you can have this meeting to look through the nominations and come back to us. Is that acceptable by the meeting as a way out to resolve the COP-appointed councillors? We already have consensus on subject areas, so we are now talking about filling the candidates' positions. Do you have an objection to that proposed way forward? I see no objection, so Australia kindly convene a contact group on this issue and report back to the plenary. I invite all those delegates that have interest in this subject to participate in the working group. I have to make it clear that this is an appointment, and so I expect parties only to participate in the working group, because this is decision making. It is appointment of candidates, so only party delegates. Thank you. Argentina, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. Argentina quiere ser parte de este grupo.
Thank you, Argentina. Yes, all parties interested can participate in the working group. It's open to all parties. So with your indulgence, we shall now move to clearing of CRPs, and I want to invite the meeting to consider the report of day one, which has been posted and interpreted in all the languages of the convention and has been in the in-session tray for quite some time. Meeting report of day one, which was Monday 17th February. Do we have any objection to recommending the report of day one to plenary for adoption? Do we have any objection to this meeting adopting the meeting report of day one? I see no objections. I take it that this meeting adopts and recommends the meeting report of day one to plenary for adoption. We move to meeting report for day two, Tuesday, 18th February 2020. Do we have any objection to this meeting adopting the second day meeting report and recommending it to plenary for adoption? I see European Union. European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. So in speaking note, European Union and its member states put it also Sargassian Sea importance to be included in action plan, and that is not reported. So we see that is as important thing to be added into the report. Thank you.
European Union, are you happy to read the text you want added on the floor so that it can be captured in the respective paragraph where you want it?
Thank you, Chair. Could you give us 5 minutes and then come back so we will propose text?
Okay, let's stand over it. Let's move to the next CRP. We shall stand over this CRP. We shall come back to it. Brazil, you have the floor. I see you are requesting for the floor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Regarding the draft report of the second day, in paragraph 60, it does not reflect exactly what we presented, as it says that Brazil was completely against this provision, and it says that it would face sanctions. What we are against is the provision that countries would not be allowed to send meeting documents, and not what is already decided in other COPs. And if you want, I can send that by email.
Thank you, Brazil. We stood over this CRP, the day 2 meeting, so feel free to send the written comments so that they can be incorporated as EU brings theirs. We shall come back to this later in the day. May I invite this meeting to look at CRP 26.1.5, Action Plans for Birds. CRP 26.1.5 on action plans for birds. I invite this meeting to indicate whether there is objection to adopting CRP 26.1.5. I see no objection. I take it that this meeting agrees to recommend CRP 26.1.5 to plenary for adoption. I now invite the meeting to look at CRP 26.2.1 on important marine mammal areas. Do we have any objections to this meeting recommending to plenary for adoption CRP 26.2.1 on important marine mammal areas? I see no objection, I take it that this meeting adopts and recommends to plenary for consideration CRP 26.2.1. I invite this meeting to look at CRP 26.2.2 on adverse impacts of anthropogenic noise on cetaceans and other migratory species. I invite this meeting to look at CRP 26.2.2 on adverse impacts of anthropogenic noise on cetaceans and other migratory species. Do we have any objections for this meeting adopting and recommending to plenary for consideration CRP 26.2.2? I see no objections. I take it that this meeting recommends to plenary for consideration CRP 26.2.2. I invite the meeting to look at CRP 26.2.5 on marine wildlife watching. Do you have any objections to this meeting adopting CRP 26.2.5 on marine wildlife watching? I do not see any objection. I take it that this meeting adopts and recommends to plenary for consideration CRP 26.2.5. I now invite the meeting to look at CRP 26.2.8 on live capture of cetaceans from the wild for commercial purposes. Do we have any objections to this meeting adopting CRP 26.2.8 on live capture of cetaceans from wild for commercial purposes? I do not see any objections. I take it that this meeting adopts and recommends to plenary for consideration CRP 26.2.8. I now invite the meeting to look at CRP 26.2.9 on a European eel. Do we have any objections to this meeting adopting CRP 26.2.9 and recommending it to plenary for consideration? I see no objections. I take it that this meeting adopts CRP 26.2.9 and recommends it to plenary for consideration. I invite the meeting to look at CRP 26.2.10 on Global Program of Work for Cetaceans. Do we have any objections to this meeting adopting CRP 26.2.10 on Global Program of Work for Cetaceans? I see no objections. I take it that this meeting adopts and recommends to plenary for consideration CRP 26.2.10. I now invite the meeting to look at CRP 14.2 Rev 1. We did discuss this matter yesterday briefly, and there was addition of a text in Decision 13 BB, paragraph B, which starts with including the possibility of establishing a working group as suggested by the Republic of South Africa. I now come back to you to consider adopting CRP 14.2 Rev 1. I see a European Union.
Thank you very much, Chair, for giving us the floor. We reflected on the comments made by South Africa yesterday, and indeed the paragraph only considered the options for a follow-up of the strategic plan, and in the way what they suggested, we also considered the options on the follow-up on the way forward that we have to work. And to be consistent in line with the proposal, not to preempt the options, we would also like to not to preempt the follow-up. So our proposal would be that to include a text that says, after considering, taking into account the experience from the development of the current strategic plan for migratory species 2015 to 2023, and then it continues in regards to available options for a follow-up. And then we would not include the text that was proposed to be added in the regards of the establishment of the working group. In this way, we also leave the process and the way forward open to be able to choose the best available possible ways forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, EU. Do you have any further requests for the floor on this subject? South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. I think a reflection to the experience and the development of the previous strategic plans will be an acceptable option and an acceptable proposal because of the experience that we had in the development of such strategic plans, which was facilitated very well by the operations of the working group at an intersessional level, because we had enough chance to look at the developments, international developments that were supposed to be incorporated in the strategic plan. So this gives an exercise again to the Secretariat to review the processes that were followed in the past in the development of the existing strategic plan and looking at the best practices and the lessons that were learned from such processes. Thank you.
Thank you, South Africa. I will now invite EU to submit the May I invite EU to read the proposed text on CRP 14.2 Rev 1.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for South Africa for accepting this as a way forward. The text would read, after in the 13BB, little b, consider, comma, taking into account the experiences from the development of the current strategic plan for migratory species 2015-2023, and the rest of the text goes as is proposed in the paragraph. Of course, with the deletion of insertion from yesterday that says including the possibility of the establishment a working group. This text would be deleted and the proposed text would be included. Thank you.
I open the floor if there is any objection to the proposed text for 13BB paragraph B. Do you have any objections to the addition of that text? I see no objection. Now I come back to you. Do we have any objection to this meeting adopting CRP 14.2 Rev 1 as amended for recommendation to plenary for consideration? I see no objection. I take it that this meeting adopts CRP 14.2 Rev 1 as amended and recommends it to the plenary for consideration. We shall now go into interpretation and implementation of the convention. And this is mainly proposals for amendment of appendices to the convention. All parties that have submitted proposals should be mindful of the time limitation to introduce the proposals. I will propose a maximum of 3 minutes to each proponent to introduce their proposal, and then we open the floor for discussion. So I invite the meeting to look at agenda item 27.1.1, proposal for the inclusion of the mainland Asian elephant, or call it Indian elephant, in Appendix 1 of the convention. I invite India to introduce the proposal. India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. India is home to 60% of the Asian elephant global population, and therefore India has a primary duty and responsibility for ensuring survival of Asian elephants. Mainland Asian elephants, bar Indian elephants, are large, social, intelligent, endangered and long-ranging migratory animals that migrate over long distances in search of food, shelter across states and countries. Mainland Asian elephant or Indian elephants are known since time immemorial to migrate to neighboring countries like Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, probably to Myanmar also. Historically, Asian elephants range from West Asia to north of Yangtze River in China. Presently, the population is limited to 13 elephant range countries. The estimated population of Elephas maximus indicus in wild is estimated at 44,500 to 47,835, and in captivity about 14,440 to 14,640 in the range countries. India has also a wild population of 29,964 as per the latest estimation, along with around 3,000 captive elephants in India. Mr. Chair, conservation of Asian elephants has been a challenge in most of the elephant range states. Habitat loss, fragmentation, poaching, illegal trade of elephants, and human-elephant conflict are the reasons that threaten the survival of this species. With habitat loss, fragmentation, or degradation, the affected elephants come into conflict and getting up killed in retaliatory action or are captured and removed to mitigate conflict. More than 600 humans and 450 elephant lives are lost in Asian region, most of which is in India and Sri Lanka. Mainland Asian elephant, Indian elephant is also listed as the endangered in the UCN Red List, as well as in the CITES Appendix 1. In India, we have given elephant as a Scheduled 1 animal and the highest protection status. It's also our national heritage animal. We have 30 elephant reserves spread over 61,000 square kilometers, managed scientifically through proper management plans. Mr. Chair, in view of the aforesaid reasons, the amendment to place mainland Asian elephant in Appendix 1 of the CMS will fulfill natural urge of migration of Indian elephants across borders and back safely, thereby promoting conservation of this endangered species for our future generation. Intermixing of smaller subpopulations in Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Myanmar will widen the gene pool of this population. It will also help to reduce human-elephant conflict in many parts of the migratory ranges. Problems and opportunities for conservation or coexistence are diverse in every elephant range states. Through dialogue and cooperation, exchange of ideas, and joint transboundary cooperation action could address many problems. The future of Asian elephants depends on our ability of our governments and people to combine the insights of science and effective governance and an ecologically aware people. Chair, India also proposes to take up concerted action for the Asian elephants. We propose to initiate a process for development of an agreement between Asian range countries and other stakeholders to achieve the goals and objectives, especially tackling obstacles, barriers of natural migration, prohibiting deliberate killing or capturing of elephants, conserving and restoring their habitats, regulating the human-elephant conflicts, regulating control of illegal trade in live elephants and their body parts, and promoting international cooperation in exchange of data, information, capacity building studies, etc. India is of the opinion that development of an agreement among Asian elephant range countries and its successful implementation is also expected to lead to improved cooperation and experience sharing among the range states for conservation of other endangered species of animals and plants and their habitat. Improvement of living conditions of communities living in backward and border areas through reduced human-elephant conflicts will also be an important benefit of this listing. Mr. Chair, India would request this convention to approve the proposal for inclusion of mainland Asian elephant, Indian elephant, Elephas maximus indicus in Appendix 1 of CMS. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, India. I now invite the meeting to discuss the proposal by India to include mainland Asian elephants in CMS Appendix 1. I recognize Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As this is the first time Sri Lanka are taking the floor, we thank the Government of India for their kind hospitality. We also congratulate Ms. Amy Frank for the appointment and congratulate you, Mr. Chair, on excellent chairmanship. Though this is not affected the subspecies of Elephas maximus, Sri Lankan government is fully support for the proposal presented by the India for conserving the highly endangered animal species in the region. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sri Lanka. Bangladesh.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the proposal submitted by India. Asian elephant is critically endangered in Bangladesh, and the number of Asian elephant in Bangladesh is 210 to 330 in resident, and migratory elephant is 79 to 107. It is very much sensitive issue, and human-elephant conflict is a very crucial issue in Bangladesh. So this elephant should be included in the Appendix 1. Bangladesh support this program, but side by side concerted action should be taken in considering the community people, that is the involving of community people, so that human-elephant conflict can be minimized, and alternative cropping system or alternate income generation opportunity should be included in concerted action, So it will ensure the conservation of Asian elephant in conflicted area like Bangladesh. And Myanmar also should be included in here, especially in our country recently. Rohingya influx created the problem, human-elephant conflict in our country. And Myanmar, I request Myanmar to consider the elephant conservation in Asia, especially elephant corridor. Transboundary elephant corridor should be open for free migration of Asian elephant. Thank you.
Thank you, Bangladesh. Let's take a European Union.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The EU and its member states would like to thank the government of our host, the government of the Republic of India, for submitting this document. The EU and its member states strongly support inclusion of the mainland Asian elephant in CMS Appendix 1. Being classified as endangered by IUCN, Asian elephant faces many threats today across its range, such as habitat loss and fragmentation, illegal killing, poaching, conflicts with humans, etc. As mega herbivores, elephants have a significant impact on their habitat, which consequently impacts many other species. Without this iconic species, the ecosystems will be dramatically different or cease to exist altogether. Therefore, strengthening of international protection and enhancement of international cooperation for conservation of elephants and their habitats will have great conservation benefits.
Thank you, EU. I see IFA.
Thank you, Chair. I'm making this intervention on behalf of the Born Free Foundation, I4, WCS and WWF. We appreciate the submission of this proposal by India and urge parties to adopt it. We are aware that a case has been made for inclusion in the island populations, but not all of these can be considered migratory, and given this, we understand India's conservative approach. The proposal recognises that transboundary cooperation for conservation of the Asian elephant has to be strengthened between mainland range countries. We agree with the Scientific Council's comments, especially regarding the importance of CITES decisions and actions for this species. While habitat loss and fragmentation and human-elephant conflict continue to represent the key challenges facing Asian elephant conservation, the trade in Asian elephant skins and skin products has emerged as a new threat that must be addressed. We hope that range states in implementing this listing will address this emerging threat and follow up as necessary in the context of combating wildlife trafficking and CITES. Mr. Chair, we believe that this proposal will provide a framework that will catalyse conservation efforts for the Asian elephant that are urgently needed to protect the individuals which move across international borders, particularly through the intent to form a range state agreement as presented in the accompanying concerted action proposal. We urge parties to support this proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, IFAO. Let's have Humane Society followed by Young Naturalists Network. Kindly make your submissions very brief, especially if there are statements in support, and then forward the full statements for inclusion in the report.
Thank you, Chair. I'm making this intervention on behalf of Humane Society International India and on behalf of Humane Society International around the globe. We are proud to support the proposal by the Government of India and urge the parties of CMS to support the inclusion of this majestic mainland Asia elephant in Appendix 1. As an organization which works on mitigating human-elephant conflict and on the prevention of cruelty to captive elephants, we fully appreciate the benefits of this firm endeavor by the Indian government. Elephants are not only the creators and keepers of forests, but also are revered in our culture, history, and mythology. Ensuring they continue to inhabit the forest they protect without coming in conflict with human beings is of utmost importance. With 3,500 elephants in captivity, as mentioned in the proposal, the listing in Appendix 1, encouraging human-elephant coexistence, will further prevent new captures and a life in cruel captivity. Human-elephant conflict is a pressing issue, and uplisting the Asian elephant to Appendix 1 and its consequential binding agreements towards concerted action will result in important conservation outcomes. Therefore, we respectfully urge all the range countries to work together and agree upon the concerted action plan. Chair, we are pleased to note the concerted action proposed by the Indian government, which undertakes to reduce human-animal conflict, along with facilitating natural migration, prohibiting capture of elephants, conserving, improving elephant habitat, and controlling illegal trade of elephants. We commit to working with the Government of India to support the concerted action plans that follow this decision. Thank you for listening.
Young naturalist.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to support Government of India's proposal in concern of Asian elephant conservation. We will submit our detail to Secretariat in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, INN. COP-appointed Councillor. I see. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Although the proposal limits itself to the mainland population of Asian elephants, I would just flag up to the room, for those who are not aware, that one of the island populations, that on Borneo, does in fact is transboundary between Sabah in Malaysian Borneo and Kalimantan in Indonesian Borneo. Sadly, neither of those countries are yet parties, but when they join us in the room, I hope the door will be open to adding that population to this listing. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. They will be taken note of. I haven't had any views opposing inclusion of mainland Asian elephant in CMS Appendix 1. So I put the question to this meeting now, whether we have any objections to this meeting adopting the proposal to include mainland Asian elephant in CMS Appendix 1 and recommending the proposal to plenary for consideration. Do you have any objection to adopting the proposal and recommending it to plenary? I do not see any objection, so the proposal is unanimously agreed and recommended to plenary for consideration. We shall move to agenda item 27.1.2, proposal for the inclusion of the jaguar in Appendix 1 and 2 of the Convention. I invite a representative of proponents. We have Costa Rica, Argentina, Bolivia, Paraguay, Peru, and Uruguay. Agree on one of you to introduce the proposal and kindly stick to the 3 minutes rule. The proposal has been circulated. All delegates have already read the content, so just highlight the proposal in 3 minutes. I see Costa Rica.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Argentina, Bolivia, Paraguay, Perú, Uruguay y Costa Rica presentamos la propuesta de inclusión del jaguar pantera onca en los apéndices 1 y 2 de la CMS. El jaguar es el felino más grande del continente americano y el tercer felino más grande del mundo, con un rango de distribución que va desde Estados Unidos hasta Argentina. Como depredadores en la cima de la cadena trófica, las poblaciones viables del jaguar son esenciales para los esfuerzos regionales que buscan mantener la salud y biodiversidad de los ecosistemas. Sin embargo, las poblaciones del jaguar están actualmente amenazadas por la destrucción del hábitat, la pérdida de corredores migratorios, la caza furtiva en el área de distribución y el tráfico ilegal de productos y subproductos. El hábitat del jaguar ha disminuido del 40 al 50% de su rango total desde 1900. En Centroamérica ha disminuido 77%. Además, el jaguar está casi ausente en Estados Unidos y extinto en Uruguay y El Salvador. Señores delegados, es importante decirles que la propuesta cumplió con todas las recomendaciones del Comité Científico de la CMS y la consulta con la UICN fue incluida en el Adendum 2 de la propuesta. Por lo tanto, el jaguar cumple con los criterios para su inclusión en el apéndice 1. Un análisis realizado utilizando los criterios de la UICN concluyó que de las 34 subpoblaciones aisladas de la especie, 33 cumplen con los criterios para ser categorizadas como en peligro o peligro crítico, debido a su pequeño tamaño de la población, fragmentación de su hábitat y la alta densidad de población humana en las áreas circundantes. Además de los 21 países dentro del rango histórico de distribución del jaguar, 13 consideran que el jaguar está en peligro de extinción. El jaguar cumple con la definición de migración del texto de la Convención. 2 tipos predecibles de movimientos en el transcurso de sus vidas. El primero es la dispersión que ocurre como juveniles al establecer su propio tamaño, y el segundo es el desplazamiento dentro de los rangos de sus hogares a lo largo de toda su vida. El jaguar viaja regularmente en busca de presa o pareja. Se han identificado 26 poblaciones transfronterizas, donde todos los movimientos regulares del jaguar se dan sobre las fronteras internacionales comunes, involucrando a los 19 estados del área de distribución actual. A pesar de las iniciativas existentes para la conservación del jaguar, los desafíos siguen siendo altos y requieren un conjunto de herramientas para enfrentar las amenazas directas e indirectas. Dada la importancia de mantener las áreas y los corredores con alta densidad de jaguar, la coordinación adicional entre los estados del área de distribución es vital para la estabilidad y la conectividad de las poblaciones en todo el rango de distribución. La CMS juega un papel clave para la conservación de las especies y sus hábitats, y hoy necesitamos que también lo sea para los jaguares. Su inclusión en los apéndices de la CMS complementarían otros esfuerzos de otras convenciones mediante la coordinación de respuesta a otras amenazas antropogénicas. Por lo tanto, Argentina, Bolivia, Paraguay, Perú, Uruguay y Costa Rica nos hemos unido para presentar esta propuesta e instamos a las partes a que nos apoyen para su inclusión en los apéndices 1 y 2 de la CMS. El jaguar no puede esperar más. Somos sus representantes y su voz. El momento es ahora. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, Costa Rica. I now invite comments from delegates on the proposal. I see Switzerland, followed by Panama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Switzerland has with concern taken note of the increased evidence for trafficking in jaguar parts and the widespread forest fires in the Amazon basin last year, threatening the core range of the jaguar and its prey. Considering that all jaguar populations outside the Amazon complex are strongly fragmented and small, considered to be endangered or even critically endangered, and that maintaining connectivity between all populations is a crucial objective for the long-term conservation of the species, this requiring coordinated transboundary action, we are convinced that listing the species under the Convention on Migratory Species is greatly justified. Switzerland therefore supports the proposal of Costa Rica and co-proponents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Switzerland, Panama.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. En nombre del Gobierno de Panamá, queremos agradecer al Gobierno de la India por haber asumido la COP13 y por su hospitalidad. Además, felicitarle por su gestión y a los demás miembros que conforman la mesa principal. En nombre del Gobierno de Brasil, Ecuador y Panamá, que apoyamos la presente propuesta, hemos identificado que el problema del jaguar es una realidad observada en toda su área de distribución, desde conflictos que involucran pérdida económica por interacción con especies domésticas, así como, y en mayor importancia, la pérdida de la especie en un futuro no muy lejano por posibles factores genéticos. Valorando la importancia de esta especie, se reconoce que dentro de nuestros ecosistemas, el jaguar es el felino más grande de América, representando una de las especies migratorias. Enfatizando que la conectividad es de muy alta importancia para nuestra misión de conservación, reconocemos que la situación del jaguar en nuestros países sigue siendo la determinada en los planes de conservación y el desarrollo de todo tipo de acciones para evitar su pérdida, como el tráfico del espécimen, sus elementos constitutivos y recursos genéticos. Es por ello que consideramos que la propuesta cumple los principios fundamentales descritos en el texto de la Convención y que la inclusión de la especie en el apéndice 1 y 2 nos permitirá mayores compromisos y sinergias en el desarrollo de estrategias efectivas para futuras acciones concertadas, por lo que muy amablemente solicitamos a las partes su colaboración de forma positiva a la propuesta de inclusión a los 2 apéndices de este felino tan importante en la cadena trófica y recuperación de los ecosistemas. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Panama. Let's have European Union.
Thank you, Chair. The EU and its member states would like to thank the governments of Costa Rica, Argentina, Bolivia, Peru, Paraguay, and Uruguay for submitting this proposal. The EU and its member states support inclusion of the jaguar in both CMS appendices. Current species range, compared to its historical range, is severely fragmented and continues to decline. Consequently, this leaves the jaguar subpopulations fragmented and isolated, with all but one of them being classified as endangered or critically endangered on national or regional level. Therefore, we believe it is essential to preserve connectivity between these subpopulations across Central and South American countries, and CMS is a very good international instrument to do so. It's very important to design and preserve these potential corridors focused on maintaining connectivity between patches of habitat suitable for the species. Even though the species already has strong national and international protection, the challenges of maintaining strong conservation efforts are high and require an adequate set of tools to address threats to species survival. We believe that inclusion of the jaguar in the CMS appendices will help international cooperation and coordination, better protection of subpopulations with transboundary corridors, and will prioritize corridor management to avoid extinction of more isolated populations. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. Let's take India.
Thank you, Chair. India welcomes the proposal submitted for listing Panthera onca on Appendices 1 and 2 of the Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species by Republic of Costa Rica, Republic of Argentina, Bolivia, Republic of Paraguay, Republic of Peru, and Oriental Republic of Uruguay. India expresses concern about the jaguar populations, which are currently threatened by habitat destruction, loss of migratory corridors, and poaching across their range. India firmly believes that by listing of this particular species in appendices as proposed will help save this endangered species in their existence. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, India. Let's hear from Australia, followed by Senegal.
Thank you, Chair. Australia would like to thank the governments of Costa Rica, Argentina, Bolivia, Paraguay, Peru, and Uruguay for submitting the listing proposal for jaguar on Appendix 1 and 2 of the appendices of the Convention. We would particularly like to applaud the government of Costa Rica for their additional comments that they'd submitted in an addendum on their listing proposal in response to Scientific Council comments on the listing proposal. It was a really robust and well-documented document that clearly addressed Scientific Council concerns that were raised during its review of the proposal, and it's exactly what I think Scientific Council was looking for and what parties were looking for when they agreed to instigate this new process that would allow listing proponents to address comments from Scientific Council prior to COP, having the discussions here at COP. So we'd like to applaud Costa Rica for that, and we think it's an exemplary example moving forward of what other listing proponents could aim to do in future. Thank you. We'd like to support the proposal.
Thank you, Australia. Let's take Senegal.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le jaguar est un animal emblématique et d'après les auteurs de cette proposition d'inscription dans les annexes 1 et 2 de la CMS, son aire de répartition est fortement menacée et dégradée, fragmentée. À ce propos, nous soutenons fortement son inscription, ne serait-ce que même pour enrichir le capital biodiversité que nous allons léguer à nos descendants. Je pense qu'il serait dommage que nos petits-enfants ne connaissent pas ce fabuleux félin. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Senegal. Let's take United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. The UK welcomes the proposal to list this flagship South American species. We are encouraged that proposal comes from a number of range states, and given the conservation status of jaguar in many subpopulations, we hope that this proposal will lead to concerted action across borders to improve connectivity for jaguars and improve the conservation status of these populations. We particularly welcome the additional evidence provided by range states in response to Scientific Council comments in regards to the movement of the jaguar across national jurisdictional boundaries. The UK government is committed to tackling the illegal wildlife trade products. Recognising the threat to jaguars, we have supported a number of projects through our Illegal Wildlife Trade Challenge Fund, specifically aimed at improving the capacity to tackle the illegal killing and trade of jaguar, including projects in Guatemala, Belize and Bolivia. These projects aim to improve the legal framework and improve cross-border and cross-sector coordination, as well as improving livelihoods in rural communities along wildlife trafficking routes. We also note that this proposal aligns well with the decisions adopted by CITES parties at COP13 on jaguar conservation, aimed at strengthening cooperation mechanisms on a local, national and regional level to reduce the threats to the connectivity of its habitats. The UK therefore supports the inclusion of jaguar on Appendix 1 and 2 of the Convention. Thank you.
Thank you. UK, Nigeria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For proper conservation and protection of this species and its parts, or their parts, listing the species in Appendix 1 and 2 of the Convention will definitely go a very long way in protecting and conserving these species. And so, therefore, Nigeria support the proposal for the jaguars to be listed in Appendix 1 and 2. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Nigeria. We shall take Eswatini, and unless we have dissenting views, we shall close the interventions because we are working behind schedule. So I will encourage dissenting views. So far we've had all the views in favor of the proposal. So I will take Eswatini and thereafter close the floor for those who are expressing support and invite dissenting views. Eswatini?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Since I'm speaking for the first time, I would like to commend India for hosting this very important meeting. We from the Kingdom of Eswatini would like to request your valuable support for the adoption of the proposal submitted by Costa Rica, Argentina, Bolivia, Paraguay, and the rest of the other countries. The jaguar is the largest felidae species and the only living member of the genus Panthera, native to the Americas. Currently, jaguar ranges across 19 countries, from southern United States to northern Argentina. The species occupancy, however, has declined to 51% of its historical range over the past century. Therefore, the Kingdom of Eswatini would like to support the forwarded proposal by all the other member states. Thank you.
Thank you, Eswatini. I will take WCS, CIC, and IFAO strictly 1 minute to express support and then submit written statements. WCS?
Thank you, Chair. WCS greatly appreciates the proposal submitted by the 6 range states to include the jaguar on Appendices 1 and 2, and we strongly urge its adoption by the parties. The jaguar is an emblematic species of the Americas due to its importance in maintaining natural landscapes and ecosystem functionality, and as an important element of indigenous cultures for centuries. I would like to thank all of the parties for their supportive interventions. WCS works to preserve jaguars in a set of globally significant, strategically located jaguar conservation units that contribute to range-wide conservation of the species. We work in 8 countries in multiple biomes, from the Selva Maya through the Amazon to the Chaco. Today, more than any time in history, the jaguar is threatened by habitat loss, direct persecution, and declines in prey populations, and poaching for jaguar parts is increasing. I won't go into all the details on why it qualifies. We've heard so much from all of the wonderful interventions. CMS, the only international treaty devoted exclusively to the conservation of migratory species, is well placed to heed the call from these range states of the jaguar and agree to steps to save this culturally and ecologically significant species so that their roar across the forests and grasslands of the Americas will never be silenced. Thank you.
Thank you, WCS, for sticking to the 1-minute rule. I very much appreciate. CIC.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As this is the first time that I'm taking the floor, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Government of India and to the state of Gujarat and its people for their warm welcome and hospitality and exemplary organisation and hosting of this CMS COP. I would also like to congratulate you on your excellent chairing of the COP. To start, the CIC would like to highlight that the CITES COP13 has recently agreed that parties should recognise the jaguar as the flagship species of its range countries so that protection and conservation of the species and its habitat becomes a joint priority. This is something that the CIC highly welcomes. Having said this, the CIC does not support an Appendix 1 listing for reasons that I wish to highlight below. So firstly, the current IUCN Red List classifies the jaguar as only near threatened globally. While many subpopulations are considered endangered or critically endangered at national levels, it is the largest population over all the range of the jaguar, the one in the Amazon basin, that cannot be determined as meeting the CMS Appendix 1 listing requirements. However, as there have been more than 20 transboundary populations identified in the Americas, where movement across international borders is probably common, an Appendix 2 listing might be warranted that could enhance the species conservation status via international cooperation. Therefore, the CIC does support an Appendix 2 listing. In addition, with a relatively large number of range countries being non-CMS parties, this raises significant implementation problems. The CIC would propose that IUCN undertakes a proper red list status review of the jaguar in the forthcoming intersessional period, and that the new assessment could then provide a properly reviewed and sound scientific basis for any subsequent proposal for Appendix 1 listing, if considered appropriate, to be submitted at the 14th CMS COP. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, CIC. IFA.
Gracias, presidente. Hago esta intervención en nombre de las siguientes organizaciones: IFA, Born Free, Defenders of Wildlife, Human Society International, Natural Resources Defense Council, and World Wildlife Fund. Nuestras organizaciones desean felicitar a los proponentes por presentar una propuesta integral que incluye en la enmienda que corresponde a las preguntas formuladas por el Consejo Científico. Es raro que las propuestas de inclusión lleguen a la CMS con tantos proponentes. Esta es una propuesta verdaderamente regional, como ya hemos visto por medio del apoyo expresado por los países del área de distribución del jaguar justo hace unos minutos y por el trabajo más amplio que estos mismos países han estado realizando en otros foros para proteger al jaguar. También acogemos el amplio apoyo que esta propuesta ha recibido de países de todo el mundo. Quizás más que cualquier otra especie terrestre en las Américas, los jaguares representan la necesidad de una cooperación internacional concertada para asegurar su supervivencia y, de manera crucial, su persistencia en el área de distribución actual. Mantener la capacidad de los jaguares para moverse entre poblaciones que están fragmentadas y también aisladas es fundamental en este esfuerzo, particularmente para las 26 poblaciones transfronterizas que han sido identificadas por varios investigadores. Muchas gracias, presidente.
Thank you, IFAO. Let's take YNN.
Thank you, Chair. YNN would like to support that proposal, which is moved by government of Costa Rica, Argentina, Bolivia, Paraguay, Peru, and Uruguay. And I would like to support the proposal from YNN. The jaguar is a very endemic and beautiful animal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, YNN. I now come back to you as a meeting. I have not had any dissenting views from any party. I come back to you, the meeting. Do we have any objections to inclusion of jaguar in Appendix 1 and 2 of the Convention? Do you have any objections to adoption of the proposal to include jaguar in Appendix 1 and 2 of the Convention? I do not see any objection. I will take it that it is agreed that this meeting adopts the proposal and recommends it to plenary for consideration. We are extremely behind the schedule. I beg the indulgence of distinguished delegates to make your interventions absolutely precise by expressing whether you support or you don't support, and then submit the detailed statements for inclusion in the meeting report, kindly, of course with the exception of proponents. Let's take proposal in Agenda 27.1.3 on inclusion of the Uriel in Appendix 2 of the Convention. I invite the proponents to pick one party from Tajikistan, Iran, or Uzbekistan to introduce the document. I see Uzbekistan kindly introduce document 27.1.3, sorry, document 27.1.3. Uzbekistan.
Chair. Thank you, Chair. The government of Tajikistan, Iran, Uzbekistan prepared a joint proposal for the inclusion of the Uriel Ovis ignae in Appendix 2 of CMS. Since our proposal is not following Wilson and Reader 2005, which is the taxonomic reference for mammals adopted under CMS, and in order to clarify the taxonomic scope of the listing, we propose to include the following annotation in the appendix. Corresponds to Ovis areas Wilson and Reader 2005, only wild population in Afghanistan, India, Iran, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Pakistan, and Uzbekistan, except for hybrid population. Uriel are known to migrate over distances of several 10 to more than 100 kilometers. Range states for Uriel are India, Iran, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan. The current population in Uzbekistan might be in the range of less than 200 Uriels, likely seasonally varying due to migrations. No increase in observed numbers is observed, and locally low numbers make the species highly susceptible to local extinction. Main threats to Uriel are poaching, capture of lambs as pets and for sale, competition with the domestic livestock, and habitat degradation, domestic dogs, transformation of habitat by deforestation, changing of land use, crop cultivation, extractive industries, urban and infrastructure development. The listing of Uriel Ovis ignae in Appendix 2 of the CMS will allow for its inclusion in Central Asia Mammal Initiative and the related program of work. It will by this enhance national and sub-national conservation efforts for the species and complement this by multilateral and bilateral activities. Listing of Uriel in Appendix 2 of CMS will particularly particularly facilitate conservation action for the migration of barriers to migration, including the modification of border fences and the conservation of transboundary populations of the species and their habitats. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Uzbekistan, and thank you for sticking to the 3 minutes rule. We shall start, of course, cutting off the mic for any interventions of proponents beyond the 3 minutes rule. And I appreciate that you've used exactly 2 minutes and 30 seconds, so congratulations. I will now open the floor for discussion of the proposal to include Urio in Appendix 2 to the Convention. I recognize the European Union.
Thank you, Chair. To be brief, I will just say that the European Union and its member states support the listing of this species on Appendix 2 of the Convention, and consequently the potential inclusion of the species in the Central Asian Mammals Initiative. We would also like to take this opportunity to note the importance of ensuring coherence between CMS and CITES taxonomy. I will send a slightly longer written statement.
Thank you very much, EU, for understanding. I kindly appreciate the spirit. Let me invite India.
Thank you, Chair. We welcome the proposal submitted by Tajikistan, Iran, and Uzbekistan for listing Urial in Appendix 2 to the Convention of the Migratory Species. Urial in different subspecies are available in this area. India is also having Ovis vigne in the Ladakh region of our country. The species found in India is already brought within the ambit of the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act. And we want that the species proposed by the proponents are highly endangered, and we support the proposal submitted by them, thinking that this proposal will actually help in conservation of the species in the areas that they are found now. So India supports this proposal. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, India, for supporting the proposal. I come back to the meeting. Do we have any dissenting views? Do we have any party objecting to inclusion of Urio in Appendix 2 to the Convention? Any party that is objecting the proposal? I see none. Do I take it that it is the agreement of this meeting to recommend to plenary for consideration of the proposal to include Urio in Appendix 2 of the Convention? It seems to be the case. It is so decided. May I now invite India to introduce a proposal in document 27.1.4 on inclusion of the great Indian bustard in Appendix 1 to the Convention. India, please.
Thank you, Chair. The great Indian bustard, Artiodes nigriceps, is a critically endangered species with a very small population existing now. This population we share with our neighboring country, a CMS partner, Pakistan. The great Indian bustard exhibits local seasonal movements. The seasonally fluctuating numbers in both the countries indicate transboundary movements. The current population size is about 150 birds or less in India. The Government of India has been taking appropriate steps for the conservation and protection of the GIB, which we call in short, including the accordance of legal protection under the Wildlife Protection Act. We have also started a focused project titled Habitat Improvement and Conservation Breeding of the Great Indian Bustard. The CMS proposal can help to find a guiding framework to convince the concerned agencies to take up the proposed actions. The proposed amendment to list the GIB in Appendix 1 of the CMS will help in better understanding about the transboundary movement of the birds and protection of the species against hunting and other human-induced mortality risks. Chairperson, India also proposes to take up a concerted action for the great Indian bustard. The concerted action proposes various actions for conservation of the GIB. This includes understanding seasonal variation, habitat used by the species, review existing and upcoming developmental projects that may impact the GIB to inform the advocacy strategy using scientific organizations and civil society organizations. For soliciting support in large, we have made the species the mascot of the COP, which is looking right from the screen to all of us. The listing of proposal in the concerted action plan is an effort to save the most endangered species now in India, and the proposal exhorts range countries to take immediate steps for losing the species from the land where it is found. We exhort all the parties who are present here to support the proposal to save this beautiful bird from extinction. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, India. I will now open the floor for comments on the proposal to include the Great Indian Bustard in Appendix 1 to the Convention, and I must remind you that we shall be enforcing the 1-minute rule. Saudi Arabia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Saudi Arabia would like to support this proposal. We have a similar species in Saudi Arabia, and I think all the group or the genus is in real need of concerted actions and conservation efforts. So we very much support this proposal, and we wish to learn from the experiences our colleagues in India have in conserving the species. Thank you.
Thank you, Saudi Arabia. European Union.
Thank you, Chair. The Great Indian Bustard is a critically endangered species with an extremely small population and restricted range. Although its migration is poorly understood, it exhibits local seasonal movements between India and Pakistan, and the species is facing many threats. Therefore, the EU and its member states support the inclusion of the Great Indian Bustard in Appendix 1 of CMS.
Thank you very much, EU. Ecuador.
Gracias, señor presidente, por permitirme una vez más intervenir. Las poblaciones reducidas de especies amenazadas necesitan acciones rápidas de conservación, y los apéndices de la CMS, sobre todo para las inclusiones de especies en el apéndice 1, es una herramienta favorable e importante para cualquier tipo de acción que se desee realizar a favor de nuestras especies migratorias. Por lo tanto, el gobierno de Ecuador, a pesar de no tener a esta especie dentro de la distribución geográfica, pero solo por el hecho de que la CMS es una convención que está vinculada directamente para la conservación de nuestras especies migratorias, el Ecuador apoya la inclusión de esta especie a favor del gobierno de la India. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Ecuador. Senegal.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous remercions le gouvernement indien de l'inscription de l'outarde à l'annexe 1. L'outarde en général est un oiseau fabuleux, et en particulier l'outarde à tête noire, c'est-à-dire l'outarde indienne, est fortement menacée. Elle fait partie des 100 espèces d'oiseaux les plus menacées au monde. Et ne serait-ce que ça, et en considération du fait qu'elle est qualifiée comme être un excellent gibier, elle est vraiment victime de beaucoup de convoitises. Donc, à ce propos, nous soutenons fortement son inscription à l'annexe 1, qui permettra certainement de sauver la petite population qui existe encore. Merci.
Thank you very much, Senegal. Perú.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. El Perú desea apoyar también la propuesta de inclusión de esta especie que está tan amenazada. Esta enmienda ayudará a comprender mejor los movimientos transfronterizos de las aves, además de proteger a la especie de la caza y otros riesgos provocados por las actividades humanas. y como dijo también la representante de Senegal, la protección que damos en esta convención va a servir para preservar la biodiversidad para las futuras generaciones, ¿no? Gracias.
Thank you, Peru. Let's take WCS.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear. Thank you. I'll be very brief. WCS strongly supports the inclusion of the critically endangered great Indian bustard in Appendix 1 and urges its adoption today. WCS works with the government and local communities on the species here in India. We urge future strict implementation of measures to mitigate threats such as power line collisions and increased efforts on in situ conservation and recovery of habitats. It is well known that power lines are a major threat to the great Indian bustard, and despite concerns being raised by researchers and government for a long time, actionable steps have not yet been taken to address this issue. We believe there should be a moratorium on building new power lines, windmill, and solar farms in the area until the current populations have recovered or stabilized, and if and when new power lines are being built, they must not present a risk for collisions. We hope that real measures are taken for this highly endangered species on the brink of extinction, and hope that its inclusion on CMS Appendix 1 will aid in its recovery. Thank you very much.
Thank you, WCS. Bolivia.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Aprovecho para saludarles y por esa oportunidad también al gobierno de India, ya que esta es la primera participación que está haciendo Bolivia. En este punto quiero hablar a nombre de la región que estamos representando, Latinoamérica y Caribe, para dar nuestro total apoyo, como decía, a Perú y Ecuador, a la inclusión de esta especie y así colaborar muy importantemente en su conservación. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. The Cobbett Foundation.
Honorable Chair, thank you for giving this opportunity. The Cobbett Foundation fully support the proposal of enlisting the Great Indian Bustard in the Appendix 1. Inclusion of the species in Appendix 1 will surely aid in transboundary conservation efforts. Chair, the species is facing threat of collision with power line in India and hunting near the international border areas in Pakistan. Therefore, its enlisting will help in long-term conservation at national and international levels. The Cobbett Foundation happily support this proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Cobbett Foundation. Somalia.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. Somalia is the first time that we take the floor. First, I would like to thank the hosting government of India, and I would like to support the proposal of India for the bustard to be done, or the inclusion of Annex 1, and I hope the decline of the population will come to grow and recover again. Thank you.
Thank you, Somalia. YNN.
Thank you, Chair. YNN would like to support that proposal which bring by Government of India, and thanks again to Government of India making that GIB as mascot of this COP, and YNN is fully support this proposal and urging all parties to support that proposal to inclusion of GIB in CMS Appendix 1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. YNN, I see. Okay. I will close the floor with Mauritius. Mauritius, you will be the last.
Thank you, Chair. Mauritius supports the proposal from India. Thank you.
Thank you, Mauritius. There are several non-party requests for the floor. Kindly submit your statements of support to the Secretariat for inclusion in the report so that we can catch up with time. I now come back to you, the meeting. Do we have any objections to this meeting adopting the proposal to include the Great Indian Bustard in Appendix 1 to the Convention and subsequently recommending the proposal to the plenary for consideration? I see no objections to adoption of this proposal and recommending it to plenary for consideration. I take it that this meeting agrees to the proposal. Let me again invite India to introduce document 27.1.5 on the proposal to include the Bengal florican in Appendix 1 to the Convention. India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. This is the proposal to include the Bengal florican, Huberopsis bengalensis, in the Appendix 1 of the Convention on Migratory Species. The Bengal florican is a critically endangered species, the number of which, like the great Indian bustard, has dwindled to a precarious situation and is in the brink of extinction. The survival of this threatened species is now ensured by some presence of grassland and the protected areas of the Himalayan foothills in the northern bank of the river Brahmaputra in the state of Assam, which has always been the stronghold for the species in India. Population of these species have declined as a result of habitat loss, habitat degradation, and hunting. There is transboundary movement of Bengal florican between India, Nepal, and Bhutan. The species has been listed under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, and it's protected since India's independence. It is listed under CITES Appendix 1 as well. The proposed amendment will help in better understanding about transboundary movement of the birds and protection of the species against hunting and other human-induced mortality risks. Listing of the species in CMS will protect the bird from hunting, power line collision, and habitat loss. This will help in the recovery of the species. India, Chairperson, is also proposing concerted action for Bengal florican with the range states of Bengal florican. Concerted actions from the range countries are needed for conservation of the species during their movements, especially during the non-breeding season. The concerted action include assessing distribution and population status in the range states, which also includes Cambodia and Vietnam, understanding seasonal variations in habitat use, identification of major threats to the species, local specific as well as all the landscape level conservation of the species through community involvement. We request the inclusion of the species in Appendix 1 for saving it from the brink of extinction. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, India. I now invite comments on a proposal to include the Bengal florican in Appendix 1 to the Convention as introduced by India. European Union.
Yes, thank you. The Bengal florican is a critically endangered species which migrates between India and Nepal and faces various threats. For this reason, the EU and its member states strongly support the inclusion of this species in Appendix 1 of CMS. Thank you.
Thank you very much, European Union. I will take Costa Rica.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Costa Rica apoya y agradece al gobierno de la India la propuesta de inclusión de la floricán de Bengala por su estado crítico de peligro de extinción e insta a las partes a apoyar la inclusión en el apéndice 1 porque cumple los criterios de inclusión a nivel de sus migraciones transfronterizas. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Bangladesh. Thank you. Let's have now Bangladesh.
Thank you, Chair. Bangladesh strongly support the proposal submitted by India. Bengal florican once upon a time was seen in Bangladesh, but it was extinct from Bangladesh from 1882. So Bangladesh strongly supports India for the conservation of these species and also inclusion of these species in the Appendix 1 of CMS. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bangladesh. Let's take Bombay Natural History Society.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bombay Natural History Society strongly support inclusion of Bengal florican into Appendix 1. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bangladesh. I see lots of requests for the floor. If they are in support, kindly clear the screen. If the requests for the floor are in support, kindly clear the screen so that I come back to you. I want to give opportunity to those who have dissenting views. Do we have any party that would like to speak against the proposal by India? I see CIC. CIC is not a party, but let me take you.
Thank you, Chair. It's not dissenting views, so to speak, but the CIC would like to thank the Government of India for this proposal. The CIC can only tentatively support the proposal. The species is already listed in CITES Appendix 1. It is, as such, classified by IUCN as critically endangered with less than 1,000 mature individuals. However, the understanding of the transboundary movement of the birds between Nepal and India is still relatively unclear and would require further research. Thank you.
Thank you, CIC. Your comments will be taken note of. I come back to you, the meeting. Do we have any objections to this meeting adopting proposal by India to include Bengal florican in Appendix 1 to the Convention? Do you have any objections to adoption of the proposal? I do not see any objections. I take it that it is unanimously agreed by this meeting to recommend to plenary for adoption inclusion of Bengal florican in Appendix 1 of the Convention. Let me now invite a European Union to introduce document 27.1.6 on the inclusion of the little bastard in Appendix 1 and 2 of the Convention. European Union.
Thank you, Chair. The European Union and its member states have submitted a proposal to list the little bustard, Tetrix tetrix, under both Appendix 1 and Appendix 2 of CMS. The little bustard is a species with Palearctic distribution and two geographically separated breeding populations. The western population, found in the European Union and in Morocco, and the eastern population from Turkey, Ukraine, Georgia, and the Russian Federation through Kazakhstan to Kyrgyzstan and northwest China and Iran. Both western and eastern populations have declined dramatically since the 19th century and remain threatened by land reclamation and agricultural intensification over most of their range. Illegal killing is also a problem in the eastern population. The European population has a declining trend of up to 40% over 3 generations, and recent national censuses in Iberia indicate overall declines of over 50% in 10 years. Resolution 11.33 on guidelines for assessing listing proposals to the CMS resolves that by virtue of the precautionary approach, and in case of uncertainty regarding the status of a species, the parties shall act in the best interest of the conservation of the species concerned, and when considering proposals to amend Appendix 1 or 2, adopt measures that are proportionate to the anticipated risks to the species. Based on these grounds, we believe that the little bustard merits inclusion on both Appendix 1 and Appendix 2 of the Convention. This will help the protection of grasslands, steppes, and low-intensity agricultural areas that constitute the main habitat of this species. I would also note that the Scientific Council recommended this proposal for adoption. Thank you.
Thank you very much, EU. I now invite comments on document 27.1.6 as introduced by European Union. India.
Thank you, Chair. India supports the proposal proposed by the European Union and its member states, and this for listing little bustard in Appendix 1 and 2 of the Convention. It's a near threatened species and it needs support from the Convention, and so that the international cooperation and facilitation will further improve the status of this species. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, India. Mongolia.
Thank you, Chair. To save some time, the support statement is going to be delivered on behalf of Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Mongolia. The four countries supports EU proposal of little bustard on Appendix 1 and 2, and considering the Asian population, it seems it's need to have better scientific studies and then active consolidated conservation actions as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mongolia. Costa Rica, followed by Peru.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Costa Rica, aunque está fuera del área de distribución de la especie, agradece a la Unión Europea el esfuerzo de presentar la propuesta y vemos que cumple con los criterios de inclusión en el apéndice 1 y 2 y suma a lo que la CMS está promulgando en el mundo, que es la conservación de las especies migratorias. E instamos a todas las partes a apoyar la propuesta de inclusión en los dos apéndices. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Costa Rica. Perú.
Gracias, señor presidente. El Perú también desea apoyar la propuesta realizada por la Unión Europea y felicitarla por la misma. Creemos también que contribuye a cumplir los objetivos de esta convención al cumplir esta propuesta con los criterios para su inclusión en los apéndices propuestos y para ser más corto nada más, instamos también a otros países a que apoyen esta propuesta. Gracias.
Thank you, Peru. Let's take Iraq.
Thank you, Chair. We support this proposal to conserve these beautiful wild birds which suffer of illegal killing and losing habitat.
Thank you, Iraq, for being brief. YNN.
Chair, YNN would like to support this proposal which is made by EU. Thank you.
Thank you all for your positive comments. I now come back to the meeting. Do we have any objection to this meeting adopting the proposal by European Union to include the little bastard in Appendix 1 and 2 to the Convention? Do we have any objection to this meeting adopting the proposal made by European Union to include the little bastard in Appendix 1 and 2 of the Convention? I do not see any objections. I take it that this meeting agrees that we recommend plenary for consideration the proposal to include the little bastard in Appendix 1 and 2 to the Convention as proposed by European Union. I will now invite one of the proponents between New Zealand, Australia, and Chile to introduce document 27.1.7 on inclusion of the Antipodean Albatross in Appendix 1 to the Convention. New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. New Zealand, Australia, and Chile have submitted a proposal to list Antipodean Albatross on Appendix 1 of CMS. The proposal covers both subspecies of Antipodean albatross. The Antipodean albatross, or toroa, is a taonga species to Māori, New Zealand's indigenous people. This means it has special cultural significance and importance to Māori. Ngāi Tahu is the principal indigenous tribe of the southern region of New Zealand, where the Antipodean albatross, or toroa, breed. Ngāi Tahu was involved in the development of this proposal. The IUCN Red List assessment lists Antipodean albatross as endangered. Both subspecies have undergone substantial population declines since 2004. The current rate of decline, if it continues, could lead to functional extinction of the species in the next 20 to 30 years. Antipodean albatross breeds on 4 island groups off southern New Zealand. Both subspecies migrate beyond New Zealand, in the high seas and other jurisdictions, from the coasts of Australia to Chile. The greatest risk to this species is believed to be from pelagic longline fishing operations in the South Pacific, where these birds can be caught and drowned on fishing hooks. Engagement with regional fisheries management organisations, which regulate high seas fishing operations, will be critical for preventing Antipodean albatross from declining to extinction. An Appendix 1 listing on CMS would complement other New Zealand, Australian and Chilean and international efforts to conserve Antipodean albatross, including through the Agreement on the Conservation of Albatrosses and Petrels, where it is included as one of 9 priority species. The listing would create an obligation on CMS parties to impose strict protection measures for the species, including on their flagged vessels operating on the high seas. It would increase international awareness and catalyse international cooperation between states, including through regional fisheries management organisations. New Zealand undertook widespread consultation with range states and took all comments received into account prior to submitting the proposal. The proposal was considered by the Scientific Council, which recommended it for adoption. The listing proposal is accompanied by a concerted action outlining urgent actions needed to recover the species. We will introduce this under Agenda Item 28. We call on parties to support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. I recognize Australia. I understand Australia, you are a proponent, so kindly use strictly 1 minute.
Thank you, Chair. Australia co-sponsored the nomination of the Antipodean albatross on Appendix 1 of the Convention. We'd also like to thank the New Zealand Government for the preparation of the nomination and for also undertaking extensive and broad consultation. Australia, as a range state for the albatross, supports the listing on Appendix 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Australia. I will now open the floor for comments on the proposal outside the proponents. I recognize Uruguay.
Gracias, señor presidente. Uruguay, en nombre de los estados de la región de América Central, del Sur y Caribe, apoya fuertemente esta propuesta de enmienda de Diomedea antipodensis para el apéndice 1 de la CMS. Como sabemos, esta ave emblemática migratoria que tiene vida pelágica enfrenta una serie de problemas de conservación, entre las que se han citado, por ejemplo, los problemas de sus características biológicas, de madurez sexual tardía, que crían cada 2 años, y a su vez los riesgos de captura incidental que ocurre frecuentemente en las pesquerías de palangres. Asimismo, se ven afectadas también en sus islas por la afectación que ocurre por los animales exóticos introducidos que depredan estos sitios. Corresponde destacar que Diomedea antipodensis, como se dijo, está listada en el anexo 1 del ACAP, acuerdo que no solo los proponentes, Australia, Nueva Zelanda y Chile, son estados parte, sino que también Argentina, Brasil, Ecuador, Perú, Uruguay somos parte del mismo. Por lo tanto, Uruguay, en nombre de los países de la región de América Central del Sur y el Caribe, apoya fuertemente esta propuesta y recomienda su aprobación. Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, Uruguay. European Union.
Thank you. The EU and its member states support the inclusion of the Antipodean albatross on Appendix 1 of CMS. The Antipodean albatross is globally endangered and both subspecies are migratory in the sense of CMS. Apart from threats at breeding sites, albatrosses are threatened by bycatch and plastic pollution in high seas areas, so listing on Appendix 1 will help to strengthen international cooperation in conservation activities.
Thank you very much. EU, India.
Thank you, Chair. India supports a proposal moved by New Zealand, Australia, and Chile for inclusion of the Antipodean Albatross in Appendix 1 of the Convention. This move will help the endangered species to recover in its habitat and improve the status. Thank you.
Thank you, India. We shall take ACAP. ACAP, take the floor, please.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, ACAP strongly supports the proposal by New Zealand, Chile, and Australia, who are all ACAP parties. The Antipodean Albatross has been listed on Annex 1 of the agreement since 2004, the year ACAP came into force, and the Antipodes Island population has been an ACAP high priority population since 2017, recognising the rapid decline of this population due to bycatch. This species, endemic to New Zealand subantarctic islands, forages to the west in Australian waters and east as far as Chile, and crosses waters beyond national jurisdictions, resulting in an overlap with 5 RFMOs, Regional Fisheries Management Organisations, as well as a number of range states. The proposed listing would further strengthen cooperation between ACAP, RFMOs, range states, and other concerned parties to improve the uptake and effectiveness of bycatch mitigation measures. This listing will give ACAP the opportunity to engage more broadly with CMS parties in fora such as RFMOs and elsewhere to advocate for effective management of threats and implementation of measures to reduce the high mortality rate currently driving the decline of the species. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ACAP. We shall take YNN.
Thank you, Chair, once again. YNN is like to support this document fully, which is being by New Zealand, Australia, and Chile. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, all of you, for your positive comments. I come back to the meeting. Whether we have any objections to this meeting adopting proposal made by New Zealand, Australia, and Chile to include Antipodean Albatross in Appendix 1 to the Convention. Do you have any objections to this meeting adopting the proposal and recommending it plenary for consideration? I do not see any objections. I take it that this meeting unanimously agrees that plenary will consider inclusion of Antipodean Albatross in Appendix 1 to the Convention. Let me invite the meeting to look at document 27.1.8, Rev 2, just to alert you that there has been slight revision in document 27.1.8. We now have a Rev 2 with just a correction of range states. So it's a small correction of the range states. I now invite Brazil to introduce document 27.1.8, Rev 2, on inclusion of oceanic white tip shark in Appendix 1 to the Convention. Brazil, please.
Thank you, Chair. The oceanic white-tip shark is one of the most widespread shark species, ranging from all tropical and subtropical waters. It is a species valued for its fins and meat, and for this reason it has been targeted directly and indirectly by different types of fishing operations. Latest IUCN assessments show that steep population declines have occurred in all oceans, with significant historical declines also reported across its range. Both the IUCN and the government of Brazil classify the species as critically endangered. ICCAT itself recognizes this as a matter of concern, and Brazil adopted the recommendations suggested by this committee in 2013. Among the main recommendations, we highlight the prohibition of the retention, landing, and commerce of this species in Brazilian territory. The oceanic white-tip shark exhibits conservative life history parameters, such as low productivity and slow recovery from overexploitation. A listing on Appendix 1 of CMS would engage parties to strictly protect the species, conserve and restore their habitats, mitigate obstacles to their migration, and control other factors that might endanger them. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. I now invite the floor to discuss a proposal made by Brazil to include the oceanic white-tip shark in Appendix 1 to the Convention. And I see Costa Rica.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Costa Rica, Perú y Argentina agradecen al gobierno de Brasil el esfuerzo de presentar la propuesta de incluir el tiburón oceánico de punta blanca en el apéndice 1. Los tiburones oceánicos de punta blanca son extremadamente vulnerables a la sobrepesca y se han documentado fuertes descensos en la abundancia de tiburones oceánicos en todos los océanos. En el 2019 fueron listados como en peligro crítico por la UICN en base a una estimación de reducción de más del 98% de la población mundial. Por lo tanto, instamos a las partes de la CMS a prohibir toda retención de tiburones oceánicos y participar en iniciativas de recuperación regional para la especie. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Costa Rica, Peru, and Argentina. Let's take Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Chair. Sri Lanka fully support the listing of oceanic white-tip shark on Appendix D of 1 of CMS. Given their strong decline in the Indian Ocean, Department of Fisheries in Sri Lanka has already taken steps to fully prohibit the capture of oceanic white-tip shark by the fisheries in a few years ago. While recognizing that migratory status, we urge other countries to join and support this listing. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Sri Lanka. European Union.
The EU and its member states support inclusion of the oceanic white-tip shark in Appendix 1 of CMS. The proposal provides evidence of cyclical and predictable movement of oceanic white-tip sharks. Moreover, we note that the latest red list assessment for this species classifies oceanic white-tip shark as critically endangered, thus providing greater justification for its inclusion on Appendix 1. Since the species is threatened mainly by overfishing and bycatch, and given that this species has already been listed as a no-retention species by all tuna regional fisheries management organizations, the species would certainly benefit from being included on Appendix 1. We believe the proposal will enhance international cooperation and appropriate conservation measures, thus helping reverse declining population trends and help ensure species survival.
Thank you, European Union. India.
Thank you, Chair. This species occurs in India and observed as one of the important catch among the shark landed in India. And further, IUCN also assessed this species as critically endangered. And India support this proposal of Brazil as it would benefit recovery of this species. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, India. Israel.
Thank you, sir. Very briefly, Chair, we support this proposal. All shark species are fully protected in Israel and have been for many years, and we've been always very much in favor of steps that will increase protection of the shark species. Thank you.
Thank you, Israel. We shall now take New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. As a range state for oceanic white-tip shark, New Zealand would like to thank Brazil for submitting this proposal to list the species on Appendix 1 of the Convention. Noting the recently updated IUCN Red List classification of critically endangered, New Zealand considers oceanic white-tip shark to meet the Appendix 1 listing criteria and supports this proposal. We note that alongside this CMS listing, it is critical that parties and non-parties continue working domestically and through regional fisheries management organisations to ensure effective laws are put in place to reduce illegal targeting and bycatch in trade of this species, as well as strong and effective monitoring and compliance mechanisms. We hope this listing will facilitate increased international cooperation for this species. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. Senegal.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. L'espèce requin océanique, comme vous le savez, est déjà inscrite dans les annexes de la CITES. Annexe 1 du MOU Shark. C'est une espèce qui a été évaluée, comme on l'a dit tantôt, en danger critique d'extinction. Donc le Sénégal soutient fortement cette inscription de ce requin dans l'annexe 1 de la CMS. Merci.
Thank you very much, Senegal. We haven't had any dissenting party. I come back to you, the meeting. Do we have any objections to this meeting adopting the proposal made by Brazil to include oceanic white-tip shark in Appendix 1 to the Convention? I repeat, do we have any party opposed to the proposal made by Brazil to include the oceanic white-tip shark in Appendix 1 to the Convention? I see no objection. I take it that this meeting agrees unanimously that we recommend to plenary for consideration the proposal by Brazil to include oceanic white-tip shark in Appendix 1 to the Convention. Let me invite Brazil once again to introduce document 27.1.9A on the inclusion of smooth hammerhead shark in Appendix 2 to the Convention. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The smooth hammerhead shark is a circumglobal species worldwide distributed in temperate to tropical waters. In the southwestern Atlantic, the smooth hammerhead range extends from Brazil to southern Argentina. Globally, it was assessed as vulnerable using IUCN criteria. In Brazil, smooth hammerheads are targeted by artisanal and industrial fisheries due to its highly prized fins, and the meat of pups and juveniles are also marketed fresh by the fishmongers in southeast Brazilian states. The species has an unfavorable conservation status because intense fishing mortality over pups is caused by gill nets and trawls operating on shallow waters and over juveniles along the continental shelf. Additionally, adults are exploited by drift nets and long lines along the shelf border and slope. Therefore, the smooth hammerhead is exploited at all life stages and throughout their migratory circuit. Including the smooth hammerhead in the CMS Appendix 2 would help to improve cooperation between Brazil, Uruguay and Argentina with respect to fishing regulations like non-fishing zones and control over the international fin market. Additionally, we would like to declare that we also support the European Union's proposal to include the global population of the smooth hammerhead in Appendix 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. I understand the next proposal from the European Union is a proposal that includes the entire scope of the proposal by Brazil. So let me invite the European Union to introduce document 27.1.9B so that we can discuss them together. both of them relate to the same species, but they differ in the scope of application. So, European Union.
Thank you, Chair. Indeed, the European Union and its member states would welcome broad support of their proposal to include the full global population of smooth hammerhead shark in Appendix 2 of CMS. As we've heard from our Brazilian colleague, the smooth hammerhead shark is a highly migratory species. It's a widespread semi-pelagic shark with a widespread distribution ranging from temperate to tropical seas. The Global Red List assessment classifies the species as vulnerable, while the Brazilian population is critically endangered. The Scientific Council of CMS in principle supported the inclusion of the smooth hammerhead shark in Appendix 2, but raised some questions concerning the conservation status and migration patterns of the population in Australia. The European Union and its member states prepared additional synthesis and updates of the migratory nature, conservation, and population status of this species by providing further information regarding the Australian population and its migratory nature. This is Addendum 2 to the proposal. Document 27.1, Addendum 2, contains the advice of the IUCN Shark Specialist Group and the Advisory Committee of the Sharks MOU. These are the two main expert bodies concerning sharks, and both support the listing proposal. Regarding the conservation status, the Advisory Committee of the Sharks MOU states that the observed and inferred declines in smooth hammerhead populations, which are still ongoing due to continued fishing pressure, have warranted it eligible for IUCN vulnerable status globally. Furthermore, the groups both conclude that the species meets the criteria for migratory, and this is reflected in the addendum. In fact, based on available data, this species is considered highly mobile, with recorded movements of over 6,600 kilometers. Furthermore, mature females show a clear migration along coastal waters to give birth in the waters of Australia and New Zealand, which indicates that mature female smooth hammerhead sharks undergo seasonal migrations across jurisdictional boundaries as part of their reproductive behavior, which makes these migrations significant to the whole population. This is further substantiated by the fact that the genetic composition of the shark is the same in Australian and New Zealand waters. Populations of smooth hammerhead shark are threatened mainly by intense fishing activities, as hammerhead have a high bycatch mortality as well as illegal fishing because of the high value of their fins. Therefore, the global population of smooth hammerhead shark would greatly benefit from inclusion of Appendix 2 of CMS. We believe this proposal will lead to improvement in international cooperation and species-specific data collection to improve national and regional management and facilitate collaboration between states for this species. In addition, it should be noted that since December of 2018, the global population of this species is already listed in Annex 1 of the Sharks MOU. This listing on the Sharks MOU was agreed based on exactly the same evidence and justification which we have submitted with this present proposal for inclusion of that same global population also on Appendix 2 of the Convention. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. I would like to propose to open the floor with guidance that when you take the floor, indicate whether you prefer the inclusion of regional population or global population. So as you make your intervention, make it clear which proposal you prefer so that we gauge the intentions of the meeting, and then we see how to move forward. So I will open the floor and take India.
Thank you, Chair. India is also a range country of smooth hammerhead shark, and India support the global population and the proposal submitted by Brazil as well as European Union and its member states. So India strongly support the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, India. Ecuador.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Ecuador, you have the floor.
Siendo conscientes que la población del tiburón martillo liso es una especie que se encuentra listada en la lista roja de la IUCN como vulnerable a la extinción mundial, donde hay datos disponibles, las poblaciones continúan disminuyendo y por lo tanto la especie claramente necesita un manejo coordinado. Cabe indicar que en el gobierno de Ecuador contamos con herramientas que son instrumentos legales mediante un acuerdo ministerial número 116 para la protección de las especies que presentan incidencias con pesquerías. Es así que recordemos que dos especies de firna ya fueron incluidos en la COP del 2014 y estas de aquí, asimismo como la que el día de hoy se está proponiendo, que es el tiburón liso, ya están dentro del memorándum de entendimiento. Por lo tanto, el Ecuador está de acuerdo para la inclusión de la especie a nivel mundial.
Sénégal.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Comme l'a si bien dit l'Équateur tout à l'heure, la présentation de ces deux propositions par le Brésil et l'Union européenne montre que c'est la population mondiale du requin marteau commun qui doit être protégée. Et donc, compte tenu de ce qui précède, nous soutenons fortement cette proposition d'inscription du requin marteau dans l'annexe 2 de la CMS par les deux pays, proposée par les deux pays.
Thank you very much. Please, parties, make it clear on whether you are in for regional listing or global population. Gambia.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Gambia support the global listing of the smooth hammerhead shark proposed by EU for inclusion in Appendix 2. Full text will be submitted to the Secretariat. Thank you.
Australia, you have the floor. Australia.
Thank you, Chair. Australia supports the Appendix 2 listing of the regional population as submitted by the Government of Brazil. But I've got some comments to make about the EU proposal for a global listing. As one of the range states for smooth hammerhead, it is disappointing that Australia was not consulted on this proposal before its submission. If we had been consulted, we would have been able to provide a great deal of information on this species, which would have considerably assisted in presenting a more accurate listing proposal for parties' consideration. Australia would also note that consultation, particularly with range states, prior to the submission of a listing proposal is fundamental in ensuring support and collaboration on species where it's needed. The EU has emphasised to us that their internal approval and coordination processes do not allow for consultation prior to submission of proposals. We have heard from many parties at previous COPs on the importance of consulting with range states before submitting a proposal, but unfortunately it continues to be an issue. Interestingly, we have since become aware that the EU conducted extensive discussion with non-EU range states for the Little Bustard proposal prior to the submission. We are puzzled as to why Australia wasn't consulted on any of the EU listing proposals. Nonetheless, the Convention has a process in place to allow for party and scientific council comments on listing proposals that have been submitted for consideration at conferences of the parties. Australia submitted extensive comments on the EU nomination under Article 10, Paragraph 3 of the Convention, and subsequently participated in the sessional committee discussion and recommendations on all listing proposals submitted for discussion at this COP. Science is on Australia's side, In fact, the listing proposal acknowledges that populations are isolated between and sometimes within ocean basins. The sessional committee reviewed the science and recommended that the Australian population of smooth hammerhead be excluded, as it does not meet the definition of migratory under the Convention. In response to the Scientific Council comments, the EU addendum relied upon by the EU in their the paper relied upon by the EU in their addendum, Francis 2016, relates to a New Zealand smooth hammerhead tagging study. This study tagged 5 sharks, all juveniles, in New Zealand waters. None of these sharks left New Zealand waters. Many scientific papers and scientists will use the term migratory. In many instances, that term is being used interchangeably for wide-ranging movements or dispersal activity. The term is usually not used in the correct context of the CMS definition of migratory, which is that a species must make predictable and cyclical movements across jurisdictional boundaries. Australia is a very large island continent. In relation to smooth hammerhead, latitudinal movements, north-south, of the type we've heard from our Brazilian counterpart, when applied to Australia, would rarely take animals outside of Australian waters, and this was acknowledged in the EU addendum. Longitudinal movements, that is, inshore to offshore, could possibly place animals outside Australian waters, but distance movements have not been demonstrated to be great enough to move animals from Australian waters through the high seas and into another country's jurisdiction. The nearest temperate water country to Australia is New Zealand. New Zealand is over 2,000 kilometres away, with a 4,000 metre deep ocean basin between our two countries. For scale, this is further than moving from London to North Africa. When dealing with a geographically isolated population, such as smooth hammerhead within Australian waters, it is unclear from the EU nomination or from the EU addendum which other jurisdiction Australia should be cooperating with under the Convention to conserve Australia's smooth hammerhead population. Australia has a strong track record in ocean governance and shark conservation, and Australia queries why the EU is trying to impose international cooperation on Australia when there's no other identified party that shares our population. It should be noted that the Scientific Council reviewed the science contained in the proposal, in addition to that provided by parties and other bodies, including the Sharks MOU Advisory Committee. Based on the science, the Scientific Council generally supported the inclusion of the global population in Appendix 2, except for the Australian population, which was not considered to meet the criteria for migratory under the Convention. The Scientific Council recommended excluding the Australian population from the EU proposal. This Convention on Migratory Species is predicated on international cooperation to conserve truly migratory species. The continued lack of consultation by some parties and the unwillingness to engage with other parties' perspectives undermines the spirit of this Convention. The continued inclusion of species on the appendices that are not eligible also undermines the credibility of the Convention, not just to parties, but also to prospective parties looking at our work from outside. As such, Australia remains resolutely opposed to the inclusion of the Australian population of smooth hammerhead. On Appendix 2, we request the proposal be varied so as to exclude the Australian population from Appendix 2 listing for this species, consistent with the Scientific Council recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Australia. I see there is a long list of requests for the floor. Australia proposes amendment of the proposal to exclude the Australian population. Maybe we can discuss that. Can we first clear the screen? Yeah, Australia proposes to exclude its population from the proposal. let me hear the views of other parties on Australia's proposal. Israel?
Thank you, Chair. Rule 21, paragraph 3 of the Rules of Procedure allows any representative to propose an amendment to a proposal to reduce its scope. And in this case, Australia has presented, in our mind, a justified proposal to amend this EU proposal based on the Scientific Council's recommendation, and we would support then this amended proposal by the EU, but the proposal by the EU, including the amendment by Australia.
Thank you, Israel. Israel supports the proposal with the reduction in scope. Let's take Bangladesh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the first time I'm taking the floor. This highly migratory species with a widespread distribution is also occurs in the Bangladesh coastal areas, and this species protected under the Wildlife Conservation Security Act 2005 and protected in Schedule 1. And this species, the main threat to the species are the gillnet and bottom trawler activities causing the mortality of pup and juveniles, and also traded for the high value of fin. So we strongly supported the proposal by EU and strongly support for the including as a global population for the inclusion of Appendix 2. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulate you, Amy. Thanks.
Thank you, Bangladesh. Let's take Cote d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire.
Oui, merci Monsieur le Président. C'est la première fois que la Côte d'Ivoire prend la parole. Nous remercions le gouvernement indien pour l'organisation de cette COP. Nous soutenons pleinement la proposition de l'Union, de l'Union européenne qui est complète en ce qui concerne la conservation de ces requins, des requins bateaux. Donc nous soutenons fortement leur proposition à l'inscription à l'annexe 2. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Côte d'Ivoire. Let me guide the meeting that we have a proposal for amendment of EU proposal for reduction in scope to exclude the population of Australia. So when you take the floor, kindly discuss that proposal to reduce the scope of EU proposal. Indicate your acceptance or non-acceptance of reduction of the scope of EU proposal. Norre?
Thank you, Chair. We too welcome this proposal, but we also support the amendment as suggested by Australia. Thank you.
Thank you, Norre. Senegal.
Le Sénégal soutient la proposition de l'UE pour le classement de la population mondiale, sans restriction.
Let me get it clear from you, Senegal. Are you opposed to the amended proposal?
Oui. Tu es opposé? Tu dis oui?
Oui.
Nigeria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The smooth hammerhead shark has met criteria for listing. Therefore, Nigeria supports the global inclusion of this species in Appendix 2 of the Convention. Now we are opposed to the amendment.
Thank you, Nigeria.
Thank you,
Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Saudi Arabia, being a range state for this species, would like to support the amended proposal. Thank you.
Let me take a European Union. A European Union.
Yes, thank you. We have already responded to the comments of Australia in our amendment. We do not, our addendum to the proposal, we do not support their amendment to our proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We shall have to resolve this. We have about 14 minutes. I hope that we shall resolve it. I want to suggest that we put the amended proposal to a vote. If it passes, we shall be home and dry. If it fails, we shall take it that the global listing, of course, will have been preferred by you. So let me invite the Secretariat to guide regarding the rules of procedure for voting.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we will first be voting on whether to accept the amendment as proposed by Australia. So a yes vote would be to exclude the Australian proposal from the proposal as submitted by the European Union. Before we get to that vote, however, I would like to turn it over to the European Union to explain whether the EU will be voting on behalf of its member states or whether the member states will vote individually.
EU.
Yes, thank you. The EU will be voting on behalf of its member states, and I would recall that under the terms of the withdrawal agreement between the EU and the UK, that the UK is still considered a part of the EU in the context of international agreements throughout the transition period that extends to the end of this year. So we will be voting with 28 votes.
Israel, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt the voting procedure. Just a point of clarification. Is a no vote a vote against listing the species, or is a no vote against the amendment? We would seek clarification, please. What is the implication of a no vote?
Like the Secretariat explained, we are going to vote on amendment of the proposal first. So a no vote means you've rejected the reduction in scope, and therefore you've opted for global listing, but that will be a different motion altogether. They can't be taken at the same time. What we shall be voting on is the reduction in scope, the proposal for reduction in scope, and a no would mean you are rejecting the reduction in scope. A yes would mean you are accepting the proposal by European Union with amendment of Australia, supported by Israel, Norway, and others. Does that clarify the matter, Israel? I see nodding, so it is fine. Can we confirm the credentials on how many votes we expect?
As reported by the Credentials Committee, we have received 63 credentials, and none of those countries are in arrears at the moment. So we will be able to receive votes from 63 parties.
So we shall move to a vote. May I request the technical team to beam the screen.
And just for clarification, when the chair calls for a vote, you will press your speak button. to indicate whether you are voting first yes for the amendment as proposed by Australia, and then the chair will call for a second vote asking whether you are voting against no for the amendment. Thank you.
Just to add that a decision will require 2/3 majority of the expected votes as per credentials accredited to this meeting. And just a final clarification, a yes would mean you press your mic to request for a floor. That would mean you are voting yes when I make the first call for voting. Then later on we shall call the second call for voting for the no. So we are going to start with those parties that support the reduction in scope of the EU proposal. I repeat, we are going to vote, and the vote that we shall start with is for parties to indicate by pressing the button to request for the floor. That would indicate that you support the reduction in scope of the proposal by EU as proposed by Australia and supported by others. So those in favor of the proposal by Australia to reduce the scope, please press your buttons. So how many? Those are 8 votes.
9.
Okay, final call, final call, final call. Those in support of Australian proposal, please press your buttons. This is a final call. Because I see a swing in the list, we must have time to close the voting. It can't remain swinging. So we are going to give it 2 minutes. 2 minutes, and I will time. Only 2 minutes to close the. All right, we have 12 votes, but out of the 12 votes, there are some countries which are ineligible to vote because their credentials, they don't have valid credentials at this meeting, and that's Eswatini, Iraq, and Philippines. So Eswatini, Iraq, and Philippines do not have a right to vote in this meeting because their credentials are not yet approved by the Credentials Committee, and therefore they are ineligible to vote. So that leaves us with 9 votes for the proposal. The Secretariat, you can be calculating the percentages. We shall come back to that. So technicians, clear the screen, yes. We shall now go for those who are opposed. Those who are opposed to the Australian proposal to reduce the scope, press the buttons. If you are a member of EU, please do not press the button because EU is voting as a bloc. Okay. We are confirming credentials, so kindly bear with us. I'm made to understand that Mozambique, Bangladesh, and Ecuador do not have approved credentials, and therefore their votes do not count. So kindly remove Mozambique, Bangladesh, and Ecuador. All right. All right. So those 4 were Those four, Secretariat, please. Those four, the previous vote had how many? 9?
8.
Okay, the previous vote had 8 votes, and the no vote has 20 plus 28, that's 48. That's 48. So the yes vote is less than 2/3, so the proposal fails. The proposal to reduce the scope of EU proposal fails on the lack of 2/3 majority to pass. So we shall clear the screens, technicians. We shall now move to vote on the substantive proposal by EU, and Australia wants the floor. Australia, please.
Chair, could we just get clarification on the number of votes for the amendment?
The number of votes for the amendment were 8. Huh? How many are there? I confirm that the yes vote had 9 votes, and the no vote had 48. Perhaps we can take the third vote of abstention before we take the next round of voting. Any countries that are abstaining from voting on the Australian proposal, place the buttons. Abstentions. Because abstentions will help us to calculate the percentage. So, all right. There are 5. Oh, okay. Those that absconded from that abstained from voting either yes or no, let's have them on record as well. Okay, there are 5. So abstentions are 5. Again, just to clarify that the proposal fails on lack of 2/3 majority to make the decision. So we shall proceed to the substantive proposal now. Technicians, clear the screen. Argentina, are you asking for the floor? Okay, good. Let's move to voting on the EU proposal, the original proposal. So again, like we did, those 4, the original EU proposal, will vote yes by requesting for the floor, and then later on after that, we shall call for those against. They will also vote by requesting for the floor, and thereafter we ask for those that are abstaining. They will again also be asked to request for the floor. So let's start with those 4, the original EU proposal. Press the buttons. Israel has a point of order. You have the floor, Israel. we would have to first clear the floor again. We have to first clear the screen before you can speak. Israel, take the floor. Israel?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I apologize for interrupting the order, but again, there are two proposals for this species. And the rules of procedure require that they're presented in the order that they were received. And it's also not clear if we vote against the EU proposal, what happens then with the Brazil proposal, or if we want only the Brazil proposal and not the global proposal. So we would seek clarification on the order of the votes, whether the Brazil proposal shouldn't come first before the EU proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Israel.
EU was hold it. On the 18th of September, Brazil on the 19th.
Thank you, Israel. Our rules of procedure provide for voting on proposal that was received first. I confirm that the EU proposal was received on 18th and the Brazil proposal was received on 19th. So we shall be in order with our rules of procedure to start with EU. But just to add that the EU proposal includes the entire scope of the Brazil proposal. So when we finish voting on the EU proposal, depending on the outcome, if it is voted yes, we do not need to vote on the Brazil proposal. So does that clarify? Yes, I see nodding. So I think we are good to go. Okay. So we shall take the vote. Those in favor of EU original proposal to list the global population, vote by asking for the floor. Those who do not have credentials, please kindly don't vote so that we don't have to calculate and check. We are voting for the EU proposal for the yes to the proposal. So we conclude that the first vote for the yes has 59 votes. That is 31 plus 28. That makes 59 votes. So the yes vote is 59. we have confirmed the credentials, and we do confirm that the 59 votes are all with valid credentials. All right, clear the screens. Those opposed to the proposal by EU, the original proposal, please vote. Okay. We have one. Clear the screen. Those abstaining from voting, indicate you are abstaining. Those abstaining from the vote, please indicate so. The abstentions are 3. So we take it that by 2/3 majority, this meeting adopts the original proposal as submitted by EU. It is so decided. Just to summarize the outcome of the second vote, I had announced okay. There is some slight amendment to the votes announced in the first vote on amendment of the proposal. Somalia was erroneously included on the no vote. So the no vote is 47 instead of 48. And that does not change the decision, but just to be transparent and have the record corrected, that the no vote against the amendment of EU proposal made by Australia, the no vote had 47 votes and not 48 as earlier displayed, because we have since excluded Somalia. So for purposes of the record, it is 47 for the no and not 48. And the decision remains the same. Thank you. We are already past lunchtime, and thank you very much, interpreters, for your indulgence. Let me invite the Secretariat to make administrative announcements, and then we adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a reminder, the Budget Committee will be meeting during the lunch hour at the place where it normally meets. In addition, the working group on COP-appointed councillors will be meeting during the lunch break as well in Seminar Hall 2, which is the room just across the hallway here in this building. Thank you.
I see Australia wants the floor. The meeting is not yet adjourned, distinguished delegates. The chair hasn't adjourned this meeting. I recognize requests for the floor by Australia.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the Friends of the Chair group for the COP-appointed councillors, now that School Shark's being pushed over till after lunch, I just request that that meeting, if it occurs at lunch, could occur in the second half of lunch, so from 2:30 to 3, if that suits people. Thank you.
You've heard the proposal. Those interested in the discussion of review of nominations for COP-appointed councillors, the meeting will start at 2:30. 2:30. Please take note. I see requests for the floor by Bolivia. Bolivia, do you have a problem?
Sí, estimado presidente, solo queremos hacer una observación que se ha venido repitiendo. La observación viene de parte de toda la parte Latinoamérica y el Caribe, en referencia a los documentos que están nuevamente en la página, que no han sido correctamente traducidos. Es una preocupación que tenemos, o inmediatamente colocados. Entonces, pediríamos una vez más que se tome en cuenta este tema. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Bolivia. I take that very, very serious point of concern, and I will take it up with the Secretariat to ensure that all the translations are fully done. Thank you very much. I adjourn the meeting.